Recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this evening session on MIAD 801, where we are going to look at the research methodology in our course. So, the research methodology is something I think we are all familiar with, but the differences comes in where your field. Some people do research in sciences, some did it in economy, some in political science. So depending on your field. So now we are going to take it one after the other without wasting our time. So research methodology. So that's what we are going to look like at. So now understanding the research methodology. The word research, that is, what is research? If you are asked what is research, so I expect you to go through to the etymology of the word research. That is how the word research was coined. So the word research is made up of two parts. There is a prefix we call re, R-E, re, and the other part which is search. So re mean again or over again, while the other part which is search means to examine closely and carefully, or to test or to probe. You understand? So that is the etymology. That is the root of the word research. Now, one thing is with research is not a single act. Understand? It's not an act of picking a book and reading it and writing down something about that book. No. So it is an itinerary of inquiry. You need to inquire. So something you need to make. You need to look into.
Blessing.
You need to look into some aspects. Now, defining the research now. So defining the
Blessing.
Please, can you mute yourself?
Sorry.
I think we are not more, so we should be able to. So defining research. Understand? Defining the word research. Research is a systematic investigation. Systematic investigation. That is, you systematically investigate something or activity aimed at gaining new knowledge of already existing facts. That is, if you are doing your research, you are trying to investigate something, an existing knowledge. You are trying to investigate an existing knowledge. But investigating an existing knowledge, the sole purpose of that investigation is to gain a new knowledge. That is, you are adding your own knowledge to the existing knowledge. Listen, so it is responsible for bringing new knowledge to light, correcting present mistakes, removing existing misconceptions, and adding new learning to the existing fund of knowledge. So when you do research, when you do your research, you are trying to share light on existing knowledge. You are trying to look at the mistakes or the gaps of an existing knowledge. That is by correcting present mistake. Listen, you are also trying to do correcting or removing existing misconception. And also you are trying to add knowledge to the existing fund of knowledge. So when we say research is systematic, we mean that research follow an organized, logical, and disciplined process. That is why we say it is systematic process, because it follow an organized, disciplined, and logical process. Because you don't do research. Research normally, especially in second semester, when you are going to do your research, you will see that your research is is usually in 5 chapters. You did it in undergraduate. So you will not put chapter 5 in chapter 1. Likewise, you will not put chapter 1 in chapter 5. That means it follow an organized, logical, and disciplined process, not just a random process. Understand? Not just a random process. So from the slide, you can see that we mentioned that there are 3 key scholars that they define the word research. 3 key scholars. So these 3 key scholars, number 1, the first one, who's calling me? Somebody was calling me. Just bear with me. Let me put my phone on. Do not disturb me. The first scholar, understand, he said that research, he defined research as a scientific undertaking. Understand? Scientific undertaking, which by means of logical and systematic technique aim to discover new facts or verify and test old facts. You are trying to discover, to this, according to this, the definition of research is a systematic.
Sorry, please. Can you come again with the first scholar's definition?
He said that research, he defined research as a scientific undertaking. That is the scientific process by which, understand, you tend to verify, understand, you tend to verify or discover new facts or verify new facts or test old facts. Understand? So from the slide, it is, I'll just read it as it is in the slide, that is a scientific undertaking, which by means of logical and systematic or systematized techniques aim to discover new facts or verify and test old facts. Understand? Analyze the sequences, interrelationship, and casual explanation. So to him, to the first scholar, he believed it's a scientific process of trying to get new facts or verifying existing facts. But this is done through a systematic and logical manner. If you are trying to verify or discover new things, you have to follow a systematic process. Listen. So to him, it's a scientific process, scientific undertaking. That is, it is governed by a standard and procedure of science, not personal preference, not that you just decide how you want to do. This research is governed by scientific process. That's the first scholar. Why the second scholar, he on his own part, he said research, he defined research as a process of steps used to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic. A process of steps used to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic or issue. Which means that to him, it's just a process, like a step. Is a step to collect information and analyze this information to increase our understanding regarding a topic or issue. So, according to this second scholar, the process or the step is referring to are 3. The first one is to ask a question. Why is this thing happening like this? What is the effect of power outage on Nigerian productivity? So you ask a question. After asking a question, You collect data to answer the question you ask yourself. That is, you collect information to answer that question. What is the effect of power outage on Nigerian productivity? You can only answer that question by having some information, data. After that one, then you present an answer to the question. Which means that the 3-step this scholar is talking about is asking question, collecting data to answer the question, and present an answer to the question. That is, it follows a step. While the third scholar, on his other hand, he defines research as an inquiry process that has clearly defined parameters and has its own aims. And the aim is to discover or to create new knowledge or theory. Listen, so to the third definition, what he's trying to define is what he's trying to understand is that you are trying to discover things with research. To him is about trying to inquire the process, that trying to inquire about something. You inquire the process that clearly defines some parameter, and you are trying to discover 3 things also. To him, you are trying to define 3 things, that is discovery or creation of knowledge or theory building. Number 2 is testing, revision, and refutation of knowledge and theory. Testing, revision, or refutation. Refutation is disclaiming or understand, going against the knowledge. The third one is investigation of a problem for local decision. Now, if you look at these 3 definitions, if you look at these 3 definitions, what these 3 definitions share in common? Because they all define research in different way. But all these three definitions agrees on 2 things. All the 3 definitions that we gave you agrees on 2 things. Number 1, research is an inquiry aimed at discovery. An inquiry, you are inquiring to discover something or verify of knowledge. That is number 1. All of them agree on. The number 2 thing that all of them agree on is that there must be a clearly defined problem that the research is attempting to address. Listen, there must be a problem that the researcher wants to get a solution for. If I say that, what is the effect of power outage on Nigerian productivity? That is a problem. That is a problem. Power outage is a problem. So you are asking the question to know the problem. What is the effect of that problem on Nigerian productivity? So these 2 things, all the definition of research, you will try to see that these 2 things agrees on these 2 things. Listen, that is about the research. Now, the objectives of research. Listen, the objective of research, we're going to look at the objective of research. Number 1 objective of research is explorative or exploratory research. So some people might call it formative research or exploratory research. So when you say exploratory research is usually done to explore. Listen, it is undertaken when a researcher wishes to gain familiarity with a phenomenon, when you want to explore something. So when a researcher wants to get familiarity, when the researcher wants to familiarize itself with a phenomenon, or when the researcher wants to achieve new knowledge or new insights. So to understand why this is important, you must understand what it means to enter into the field where you have little knowledge. Sometimes some of you are not in political science field before, but you just find yourself doing MIAD. You can use exploratory research to gain more insight on anything with international affairs and diplomacy or anything with political science. Listen. So if, for instance, now, currently, before the advent of AI, if somebody said there is going to be AI today, maybe 20 years to this time, some people don't know, but you can use your curiosity to explore, try to investigate the topic of AI. Understand now? So sometimes you can try to explore what is the causes of crisis in the Middle East, what is the causes of how do you call it? Crisis in some part of Nigeria. Understand now? So there are some topics that some people have not studied, but because you have an idea, you have the curiosity. The curiosity may push you to understand some topic that is not being explored by some people, that is not being studied by some people. Listen, that is the exploratory research. The second objective, we have is the descriptive research. The descriptive research. And when we say descriptive research is aimed to attempt to describe systematically a situation, problem, phenomenon, services, program, or to provide information about the living conditions, attitude, or behaviors. So when you are trying to describe something from the name descriptive, that is description, when you are trying to describe a particular system, a particular phenomenon, problem, situation, services, program, systematically, you are trying to employ the descriptive research technique. So with the descriptive research, the researcher does not attempt to explain or understand the phenomenon. But what the researcher do is that he tends to describe that phenomenon. He does not explain it. He describes that phenomenon with accuracy. Understand? So when somebody describes something to you, A to Z, that is descriptive research. So that is description. Understand? So sometimes you might want to understand why is diplomatic relation between Nigeria and the Sahel country difficult. That is Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, because there are no more of ECOWAS. Currently, the communication is not that strong because there are no more members of ECOWAS. The communication is not that strong like before. So you might try to understand that to describe how the communication is currently. So you describe it with accuracy. That's the second one. The third one, understand, is the correlational research or diagnostic research. In my slide, I put diagnostic research. Understand that? So it's either correlational or diagnostic research. Understand that? So to the correlational research, this one attempt to discover. Understand? It tend to like the correlational research tend to attempt to discover or establish the existence of relationship or interdependence between two or more aspects of situation. You want to know the relationship between two things. You will use correlational research. Listen. So you use correlational research to know the relationship. What is the relationship of poverty, or what is the relationship of unemployment on insecurity in Nigeria? Because some people might say unemployment is also a cause of insecurity. Some might say no. So you will not try to you will not try to employ the correlational research as a principle to find the relationship between these two concepts. Understand? Now, the third one, with the correlational or diagnostic research, what we need to understand is that is more like the somebody that use correlational research. Understand that you tend to go beyond the descriptive level. But the descriptive level is just going to describe the phenomenon. But the correlational one is going to go beyond to show the relationship of these two situations or aspects. Understand? So, because with correlational, it's like doing a diagnostics. You are when you go to the hospital, when you go to see your doctor, the doctor do a diagnosis on you to know the problem. So, if you don't go deeper or further, you as a doctor, you will not know the problem of your patient. The same thing applicable to correlational research. You go beyond just describing the problem. With the descriptive research, the patient might say, I'm having headache. Okay, we write it headache. But with the correlational research, they go beyond it to know, okay, what caused the headache? What caused the headache? The relationship. That is, maybe something caused the headache. That's just some doctor will say, okay, go and rest. Maybe you are stressing yourself. Understand? Now, how do you call the which number are we? Which number are we?
Correlational, diagnostic.
Okay, diagnostic. Okay. No, which number? Is it number 3 or number 4?
Number 3.
Number 3, okay. Okay, so the number 4 is the hypothesis testing or the explanatory research. And from the word is explanation. Explanation. So, explanatory research. The hypothesis testing research or the explanatory research is designed to test a specific hypothesis of a causal relation between variables, between two or more variables. I'll give you an example. Understand? So it is mostly this type of research. Understand? It is most demanding type of research. Understand? It is the most demanding type of research because it involves a rigorous methodology. Understand? It involves.
Sorry, sir. Can you come back?
Okay. So we said the hypothesis testing research or the explanatory, because you are trying to explain something, understand, is designed to test a specific hypothesis of a causal relation between variables or between two or more variables. You understand? Now, and I mentioned that it is one of the it is most demanding type of research. Understand? That is, it requires a lot of work. Understand? It requires a lot of work, requiring a rigorous methodology. That is, the method you are going to employ when you are doing an hypothesis testing research is going to be too deeper. Understand? So can I proceed with the person that says I should go back?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Now,
I have a question.
you have a question, okay?
Yeah, when you were explaining diagnostic, you had mentioned relationship between they said to establish existence of relationship
So, more
or the
aspect of
internet.
situation.
Sorry?
We are with the diagnosis, we are trying to trying to diagnose the relationship of two or how do you call, between two or more aspects of a situation.
Okay, because I'm not trying to differentiate it between the relationship also testing between I mean hypothesis relationship testing as well.
Yeah,
So I'm trying to.
I'll give an example. Now, let's take an example, for instance, now for the hypothesis testing. Let's take an example of. So, let's say you are trying to use hypothesis research that informal head of state communication. That is, some head of state, maybe between two presidents, they might have informal communication. Listen, so before the formal negotiation, before president we do a formal negotiation, they usually have informal one. Understand now? So let's say you are trying to do a research, you know that this informal head of state communication before the formal communication cause a higher how do you call chances of agreement, because it allow leader to know the flexibility of this the conversation they want to have. You want to understand. Let's say you want to understand with this example. You want to understand how informal communication before the formal negotiation between two presidents, how it impacts agreement when it comes to international organization, international or bilateral or multilateral agreement. You want to know how this thing interrelates. Understand? So some might say that informal communication can impact bilateral agreement before the formal agreement. But some people might say no, it cannot impact it, it cannot affect, it cannot change it. Understand? So if two presidents they have relationship together, they can easily talk behind doors before they come outside to have an agreement. Some will say, okay, it will have impact. Some will say it will not have impact. Understand? So testing this hypothesis, listen, you are going to observe the two things that correlate. You are going to observe the two things. Does informal agreement, informal communication have impact on formal communication? Or does formal communication have impact from informal communication? You are going to observe it. After observing these two things, you will not carefully design possible explanation to these two problems, to these two questions. Understand? It might be that to you, it might be that the informal communication actually produce an agreement rather than both produce agreement. Understand? So with the informal, with this explanatory, you try to observe a scenario, two scenarios that affect each other. I might say that I can put an example like the traffic, the traffic in Lagos have effect on productivities of workers in Lagos. Listen, so the question as a researcher, you observe how traffic has effect on productivity. Does it have any effect on their productivity? Some might say what some workers in Lagos, they wake up as early as 5 a.m., 4 a.m. to go to work, and they sleep late. They woke up late. They woke up early. Some might say no, it doesn't have any effect on productivity. But before you will be able to conclude, you observe how both scenarios affect each other and you explain it extensively. But with the diagnostic, you are just going to look at how these two correlate, how these two phenomena correlate with each other. How these two phenomena correlate with each other. That is about that. Now, the next thing we are looking at here is the importance of research. So, from the definition of your research, you can pin out the importance of research. From your definition of research, you can bring out the definition of research. So, from the definition, what is who can tell me the importance of research from the definition? Importance of research from the definition, please. Anybody?
To add new knowledge.
To add new knowledge. That is all your definition, because you are trying to investigate the knowledge. And at the same time, when you investigate, you come out to add your own contribution to the knowledge. Understand? So, number one important of the research is to research adds to knowledge. You add new knowledge. So that is the most fundamental contribution of research. So this might seem obvious because from your definition, you can see it there, right? But you need to understand that knowledge is not static. Listen, it's not static. A scholar might get something this year, and another scholar might get something to add his contribution to it. Listen, so it is something that evolve, that move. So researchers are more like bricklayers. They are more like bricklayers who build a wall brick by brick. Listen now. So each brick will usually depend on the one under it. Which means as a researcher, if you want to add knowledge to an existing knowledge, that means you are going to depend on a knowledge that exists before you can say you are adding something to something, a knowledge to another. Listen, so it's like you as a researcher, you build on the existing body of knowledge, small by small. Listen, small. Today we are using iPhone. Before we are using cell phone. Before phone they were using was big. They were using home phone. They developed, which means they did research to know that okay, instead of putting the cell phone at home, telephone, you can do something that is portable. That is, they built on the existing knowledge and providing information about previous. So you cannot build on existing knowledge if you don't have. You cannot add to knowledge. You cannot add to knowledge if you don't have previous knowledge. So you need to have a previous knowledge ground, investigating the knowledge, knowing the gap in the knowledge, and bring out your own contributions. So that's number one important of research. Number two important of research is that research improves practice. It improves practice. So research is not just important because it adds knowledge to existing knowledge, but because it makes practice.
Sorry to cut the stream of your thoughts, please. I just want to confirm: is this being recorded? Farida is saying that her baby is crying. Please.
Yeah, it is recorded. It is recorded.
Okay. Thank you.
So research is not that we are saying that research is just to add knowledge. It is also established to improve practice. Listen. So in diplomacy, for instance, now the stakes of poor practice are usually based on failed negotiation, preventable conflict, or missed opportunity for cooperation. Some leaders, they don't get opportunity in the international system because of some poor communication skill or failed negotiation. But if you research, you know what is the problem. Why is it that we did not achieve our goal? Once you know the problem, you proceed to find a solution to the problem. And the only way you can proceed to find a solution to the problem is to look back to where you failed. Listen. So in diplomacy, research informed diplomacy. In our own field, it informed diplomats, understand, on how they can how they can ameliorate or improve their skills. Listen now. So it will always tell you new suggestion on how you can improve your services in teaching, in engineering, in any field. Research will always tell you how you can improve yourself. Listen, because it will help you to evaluate your approach, translate it into better way that other people will understand. Before COVID-19, the online classes were not that common. They were not common. But when COVID-19 came in, people are now using online classes to translate, to transmit information to students. But before COVID-19, no, physical classes were more common than online classes. But after COVID-19, people think of another way to improve classes. That's number one. That's number two. Number three is that research inform policy formulation and debate. It informs policy formulation and debate. Understand? So, because with research, you are provided with database evidence for policy and decision making. So, as a stakeholder or as someone in diplomacy, policy is a translation of value and interest into action. Listen, but if your policy without evidence is merely just an ideology dressed up in governance, so you need, for you to give a good formulate a good policy or a good argument, you need research. You need research, because the research we are talking is going to provide evidence based on what you can stand on. Listen, so policymakers, especially whether you are working in national assembly, regional organization, international organization, local community, listen, they usually face problem when it comes to giving or supporting the ideology. So what they do is to get correct information. So to get correct information, you need to do a research, because the research is going to give you evidence that you are going to take to buttress your interest or to buttress your policy. Yes, son. So this is the three how do you call it? The three importance of research. So more so, you need to understand that research informs not just the technical contents of policy. Listen, sometimes you might especially in National Assembly, there might be debate. There might be a debate where you want to talk about a particular problem in the society. So you will need research to give you exact data, exact information, number by number, because you cannot come and stand in front of people and talk without having evidence. And the only way you can get the evidence is usually through research. Debate happen. It happen in classes, even in mosques, in churches, between our religious leader. Debate happen where they will ask you to prove, to show proof. And the only way you can show proof is through research, by trying to go deeper into the topic to understand the topic in front of you. Understand? Am I communicating? If you don't understand, just let me know, please. We are here. We have the time till 11 p.m. I know some of you might be tired, but we have the time till 11 p.m. So can we proceed, please? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Just want to be sure you can hear me. Now, types of research is the next thing we are looking at. Types of research. Now, so we are going to look at type of research, but I will mention how they are. The number one we are going to look at the type of research based on general classification. Type of research based on general classification. And based on general classification, we have two types of research. We have the pure research and the applied research. Pure research and applied research. That is based on general classification. And when we say pure research, listen, so pure research is also called basic research or fundamental research. Listen, so there is a type of research undertaken to develop and test theories. A type of research undertaken to develop and test theories and hypotheses that are intellectually challenging. Understand? Is a type of research that is being used to test theory and hypotheses that are intellectually challenging to the researcher. Listen, without look at that. The next aspect I want to mention, without necessarily having any practical application at the present time or in the future. Listen, you need to add that last part into definition of pure research. That last part I mentioned.
Please say it again.
Okay. So
Pure research is a type of research.
Is a type of research that we undertake to develop and test theory. You just do it to develop and test theory and hypothesis that it is challenging to the researcher. Listen, maybe a researcher sees something challenging to him. He can try to do research. But when he's doing a pure research, listen, you need to understand that you are not practically applying the result to a present condition or future. Necessarily, it might not be necessarily how do you call it? It might not be necessarily important to add it to a present condition or a future condition. An example of it is what we do in school. In your undergraduate, you do research, you do project, but you ask yourself, the project you did you apply the knowledge to something happening in a society? No. Listen, no. Like my own research is based on globalization and how the people, Japa, how people are leaving Nigeria and coming to the UK. Listen, but the knowledge I will get, the research I will do, the knowledge I will get at the end is not to apply to anything happening in society, but it's just to have my own contribution. Because after that, I'm going to publish it online and anybody can reference me. Listen, so the driving motivation of pure research is intellectual curiosity and the desire to understand how something works or understand an intellectually challenging topics. Listen, so that is the motivation behind the pure research. You are trying to find solution. Listen, your curiosity push you to understand something, why something is like this. Listen, so you need to understand that when we are saying pure research, it has no immediate practical application. You are not applying to solve a problem now. Listen, you are not using it to solve a problem immediately when you come to pure research. Now, the second type of research is the applied research. And when we talk about the applied research, one thing we need to understand is that the applied research is conducted to solve specific practical questions. Listen, it is conducted to solve specific practical questions. Listen, so its purpose is not to understand for understanding's sake. You know, with pure research, its purpose is to understand something. But the applied research is not just to understand something. Listen, you understand and you move further to produce knowledge that can be directly used to address a defined problem. Listen, you use that one to find solution to a problem directly in policy formulation, in administration, in program design, in medicine. Look at COVID-19. When COVID-19 came, you will notice that the World Health Organization organized to search for a cure. That is applied research. They did a research to find vaccine for it. There was no vaccine before. When you can search, when COVID-19 first came, there was no vaccine for it. But they did apply the research to look for a vaccine for it. It happened also in politics. In policy formulation, in administration, it happens where you try to find a solution to a particular problem. You do the research to find the solution to a particular problem. Listen, so That is about the applied research and the pure research. Now, the second category of research. Okay, we are going to. Okay, I'm trying to show you my slides. So classification by objective and inquiry. That is the second category type of research. The classification based on objective and inquiry mode of inquiry. Listen. Now we have descriptive research, and with the descriptive research, it does not explain. It does not explain. Listen. The descriptive research, you go there to describe. You can see we've talked about that one, but you describe a situation, problem, or phenomenon systematically. Listen, you are not explaining, you are just describing. Example is this: describing living condition in the community, because the living condition of people in the Middle East amidst the insecurity. What is the living conditions? That is about the descriptive research. So that's the number one. The second one is the correlational research. So with the correlational research, you will notice that with the correlational research, you try to discover and establish the existence of relationship or the interdependence between two or more aspects of situations. Understand? Why the third one is explanatory, the fourth one is exploratory. We've talked about that one in the types of research. Listen, so these are research based on objectives and inquiry mode. The general terms, the research based on general classification is the pure and the applied. Listen, on the general term, you say pure and applied, but based on classification, based on objective and inquiry, the descriptive, the correlational, the exploratory, and the explanatory. I made a mistake on my slide. I put the last one is explanatory. The third one is explanatory. Okay, explanatory is right. Explanatory and exploratory. Listen. So explanatory research. Understand? So you are trying to explain something. You are trying to know, with the explanatory research, you seek to know why something happened. Because the explanatory research attempt to answer the question why. Listen. So it is much more harder than answering what. Listen, for instance, now you say why this thing is happening, why there is insecurity in the Middle East. You are trying to explain that one. Why X something happening like this? Why this thing is happening? So with the explanatory research, the researcher implore the question with why. We put it in place with why. Why this such thing happen? Why such thing happens? Yes, that is explanatory. But the exploratory, understand, is undertaken especially when the researcher, understand, when the researcher is venturing into an area that is new or that has little knowledge or little understanding. Understand? So, because all this research we are saying, there are some researcher that they venture into a particular knowledge that has little knowledge. Like AI, for instance, now before the advent of AI, some people who have been doing research on it, how to make AI, how to make AI. Understand? So that is about the explanatory. You go into an area that is new or that has little understanding. And with the exploratory research, the researcher goal is to develop a preliminary understanding of the phenomenon, not to tell. So it's just as somebody coming up to bring out an idea after doing his research, and other researchers are going to base on his own idea to develop that particular concept. You understand? With exploration, you usually use qualitative method or interview to understand a particular phenomenon, something that is not yet known to many people. You venture into it to understand why that thing happened, or you want to understand the phenomenon. Understand? That is research based on the objective and a method of inquiry. Why the next one is a research based on the what is this? Based on I've talked about objective rather. Research based on objective. We talk about that one. Now the research based on method of inquiry. We have the structured one, the structured approach research, and the unstructured approach. Listen now. So structured approach. People will say the structured approach is also the qualitative research. While unstructured approach is the what am I saying? Structured approach is quantitative research. Unstructured approach is qualitative research. Listen, structured approach is quantitative. While unstructured approach is qualitative research. Listen, it's advisable for you to know the types of research, please. It's advisable in exam. Is usually they might ask you to differentiate between qualitative, quantitative, or explain exploratory, exploratory. So types of research is very important. Understand? So now, when we say a structured approach, listen, when a researcher use structured approach in place, understand, every decision about that research follow a process. Understand? The process is usually defining the objective, the design is going to use for the research, the sample, the question to be asked, and the category in which answer will be recorded in. So with the structured approach, the researcher follow a precise process. Listen, the researcher follow a precise process. Everything that the researcher is going to do in a structured approach is predetermined. Is predetermined before any data is being collected. When you say it is predetermined, is that you've already put down your objective, your aims and objective, your questionnaire, your sample, your design method. You've put down everything. And once you do that one, you proceed with getting your data. And so now you can check on my slide. I said the structured approach is used to determine the extent of a problem. Listen, how many people have voters card and they don't vote? Listen, some people have voter cards, they don't vote. Some people don't have, but they want to vote, but they are not ready to register for voters card. Listen, so with the structured approach, it is suited to question about how many, how much, how often. When you ask question and you put in, okay, how many things, how often, or how much. Listen, that is where you use a structured approach. But on the other hand, the unstructured approach, which we say is the same thing as a qualitative research. So the unstructured approach, I like using unstructured approach. I like using unstructured approach when I do my research. That's qualitative research. So I don't have much wahala with that one. So unstructured approach build flexibility into every aspect of the research. Listen, you use flexibility on every aspect of it. It will not stress you. Because the researcher enters the field, the research, the topic with general question rather than specific one, and allow the direction of that question to guide him. So with the unstructured approach, it is used to explore the nature of a problem without quantifying it, without making it general. So Sorry, without quantifying it, I'm sorry. Understand? So, how do you call it? With unstructured approach, you can try to put in interview. Listen, like for instance, when we do in an interview that follows, there are some interviews that follow qualitative approach. Listen, there are some interviews that follow qualitative approach. In that kind of approach, the researcher might ask questions with many objectives, like A, B, C, D, A, B, C, G. You choose out of the objective that you have, you choose out of the option that you have, which means that there is flexibility when it comes to unstructured approach or qualitative approach. But when it comes to structured approach, when it comes to structured approach questionnaire, question is usually predetermined, so it is not flexible for the people that want to answer it. So the flexibility of this qualitative approach is the greater strength that the researcher is going to depend on when he's doing his research. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is it that qualitative or quantitative or structure or unstructured approach, why are they important? Why are they important? Listen, both are important because for a researcher to give out a good answer or a good result, they must employ the two type of approach, both qualitative and quantitative. Some lecturer will prefer you to use mixed method. We call it mixed method. That is, you combine qualitative and quantitative approach together instead of using just qualitative approach. Listen, so that is about that. So in case you don't have a question, you can proceed. You can ask why we are proceeding. So you can see from this slide now. I try to talk about the how do you call the differences between qualitative approach, that is comparing. My slide is off. My camera is off. Is it off? Okay. The relationship between qualitative approach and quantitative approach. So it is important to know the differences between the two. And so comparing the two qualitative approach, you will see that with qualitative approach, we see it focuses on how people can have different way of looking at social and psychological reality. That is, it makes things flexible for people. Like, different people have different opinion, so it considers the opinion of people. But with the quantitative approach, it focuses on describing reality by discovering general laws through objective measurement, which make it very complex. Listen, with qualitative approach, it incorporates real-world context, real-world problem, and take different perspective on board, which means that one perspective is not taken when it comes to the qualitative research. Different opinion is being considered. But with the quantitative research, it uses precise definition and statistical control to discover external noise, external differences. With the qualitative research, it study anything qualitative, study behavior in natural settings. It study behavior in natural settings with no manipulation of variable.
Sorry, I missed the qualitative research from the beginning. If you can start, sorry.
So, which one? Which number?
From the second one.
I said it incorporates real-world context, real-world issue or problem. It incorporates real-world problem or context and take the differences on board. Because you and I, we might have different opinion on a particular topic. Listen, so we are both welcome, but he's going to look at the differences of our opinion also. Listen, we are welcome, but if you are welcome, we are looking also at why is your opinion different to mine. So, but when it comes to the quantitative research, this one uses a precise definition and statistical control to discount general arguments. Now, with that question, let's say 1 plus 1, everywhere you know that it is 2, right? 1 plus 1, if 1 plus 1 turn to 3, or sorry, 1 plus 1 is 2. If 1 plus 1 turn to 3, definitely that means there's error somewhere. So, for you to prove that 1 plus 1 is 3, you will now involve statistical means, which means that qualitative research, you use statistical method to achieve that. So, because it has its own principle, process, scientific process. Now, with the quantitative research, data cannot be adequately expressed numerically. That is information, data, when it comes to qualitative, it is not done by numbers. We use words and accounts. Qualitative research uses words. It doesn't use numbers to express issues. But quantitative research uses statistical technique that allow probability. In quantitative research, you use numbers, you use statistical methods. But qualitative, you don't use number, you don't use numerical words, you use words. Qualitative, on the other hand, use exploratory research method. It uses exploratory research method. But on the other hand, the quantitative use the hypothesis testing method by knowing the cause and effect of a particular thing.
Sorry, just to get that again. Did you say quantitative uses exploratory method?
Qualitative.
Okay.
Qualitative is usually exploratory because you are trying to explain. You don't deal with numbers. But the quantitative on its own part, you will use hypothesis testing method. And so qualitative is more flexible. But systematic, with a systematic research process. But quantitative is not flexible because it employs fully defined process of data collection. It's a fully defined process of data collection. With the qualitative tend to ask questions on why and how a particular phenomenon happened. But quantitative investigate what, where, and when a particular phenomenon is happening. Understand? So one answer the question why, qualitative answer the question why and how. Any question that asks come with why and how. Why the other one answer what, where, when. Can we proceed? Can we proceed?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So the other one we are going to jump this one is not usually asked, which is revolutionary and normal research. It's not usually asked. So we're going to jump that one. So the normal research and the revolutionary research. So you can just check it from the slide I share in the group, so you can have an idea of that one. Now, because we need to finish by 11 so that you can sleep. So I don't want to keep you awake. Now, characteristics of a good research. Number one characteristics of a good research. Number one characteristic of a good research. It must, number one is controlled. Just put it like that. Let's put it as control. So whenever we say control in research, we mean the ability to isolate the relationship between the variable you are studying from the influence of other variables that might also affect your findings. Because before a researcher go into a research, that researcher has its prior knowledge. So you need to you don't let your personal feeling control your research. Listen, so no external factors must affect your research or your finding. Listen, that is why those people that are doing those science students, that is why they go to laboratory to test some things. So research in social science, in social sciences, sometimes the researcher can let some external factors or feelings influence the result. But a good researcher, person will not let external factor or relation affect the study he's doing. Listen. Number two, rigorous. That is, the research must be rigorous. That is, we mean that every procedure or every decision that the researcher take must pass through some process. Listen, must pass through some procedure, some process that is appropriate and justified to the research question. The process or the procedure you are taking as a researcher must be appropriate and justified for the research question you are asking yourself. Listen, so a good researcher does not choose a method of research because that research method is convenient for him. But the researcher is going to choose his research method based on the research questions available to him. Listen, so the research question is going to guide him. So which means that your research must pass through rigorous process. And number three, the research must be systematic. A good research must be systematic. That is, your research must pass through logical order. It must pass through, it must follow a logical sequence or order. That is, there is a step, the step, the research that you need, there is a step as a researcher that you need to pass through to achieve your result. And that step you need to pass through cannot be taken in isolation or in the blue. So you cannot analyze data before you have collected that data. Before you say, okay, as a researcher, you want to analyze the data, you need to collect that data. Not that you just come in, okay, you don't have data at hand and you are coming to conclusion. So you have process that you need, systematic process, scientific process that you need to pass through. Listen. Therefore, a good research must be valid and verifiable. A good research must be valid and verifiable. It must be valid and verifiable. And when we say validity of a good research, answer now, that is the research your conclusion. Your conclusion are correct and can be verified. We can verify your result. We can verify. Any other person, if you conclude on something in your research, any other person can be able to verify it to know, okay, if your conclusion is good or is accurate or not. And a research becomes valid when it captures the purpose of the research. Listen, if for instance now in your purpose of research you are trying to look at the effectiveness of diplomacy, in your conclusion you must also talk about that effectiveness, so that you can measure if you are able to achieve your research question at the end of your research. And now the next one is that a good research must be empirical. That is, your conclusion should be based on evidence from real life experience. You must have evidence. Your observation, your measurement, your how do you call your conclusion must be measurable. You must have evidence for it. So when you say a research is empirical, understand now, we are trying to put in that research can be tested against reality. We can test that research. And the last one is critical. So your
Please, can
research.
you just cite an example on this? It must be empirical.
Okay. So I said an empirical claim. Normally, when you say your research is empirical, I said is one that can be tested. Anybody can test it to know if your conclusion is right or wrong. Listen, so this is the empirical method is what distinguishes between scientific process or scientific knowledge from philosophical argument. So normally, as a philosopher, the philosopher will usually reason from premise to conclusion. But the scientist or the researcher will test those conclusions against observable data. So the empirical aspect of your research means that you do your research based on available evidence. I don't know. Okay, you go to the hospital, for instance. You go to the hospital and they want to prescribe paracetamol for you. They want to preserve paracetamol for you. But before they preserve paracetamol for you, that means they must have passed through something before that paracetamol. They will conclude that, okay, if you take paracetamol, it's going to solve the problem you are having. Not that they just say, okay, I'm having a headache. Okay, go and take paracetamol, go and take ibuprofen. So before they conclude on taking ibuprofen or taking paracetamol, that means you have evidence to back up the reason why you are giving paracetamol or ibuprofen to your patient. So the claim of that particular doctor must be grounded in data. That is, you must have things to back up your conclusion. If the doctor concludes that paracetamol is going to solve this sickness, then that doctor has a particular, data or information or evidence to put in place. Did you get it, sir? I don't know who asked the question.
Thank you, sir. Let's proceed. But I'm not very clear, but I'll come back to it.
You are not clear. Which access?
My brain is just slow, sir. No problem. Let's proceed. Let me
We
not
are
throw
here.
the
We are
class
here.
back.
Maybe we'll end by 11:30. But I'm just afraid that some people might be tired. Understand? So I don't read. That's my problem. I don't read. So I will sleep after this class. So but some people might be tired. So So in essence, the empirical aspect, let me repeat it again. Listen. So, whenever you do your research, you have a conclusion. Because any research you do, you have a conclusion. Now, if you conclude at something, that conclusion must be based on evidence, not your own personal argument, but it must be based on evidence. It's like you are saying that you are having headache and you go to the hospital and the doctor concluded that you are going to be given paracetamol as solution for your headache.
Mm.
But before that doctor is going to conclude that you'll be given paracetamol, that doctor will have passed you through a particular research. And based on his evidence, he is now going to conclude that paracetamol is going to be a solution to solve your headache. So, which means that research, any conclusion in your research must be based on an available data, an available evidence. Without the available evidence that can be tested, the research is not empirical. There must be available data, evidence to your conclusion, to buttress, to support your conclusion in research. That's the empirical aspect. You understand? So I think we've talked about the critical aspect. Right? Now, the next one is the ethical issues in research. We are still in module 1, so we still have a longer way to go. We have a long way to go. We are going to slide 50 and we are in slide 15. So we are going small. I know we are going small because the exam is tomorrow, so we are studying together. Now, ethical issues in research. So normally we need to talk about I don't want to talk about this one. They are not that very important. That is a historical background of ethical issues in research, but they are not that how do you call important. But you need to know the ethical issues in research. So why research require ethical approval? All profession in the world, they have their ethics. All profession in the world, they have their own ethics. They have how things are being done. So likewise in research, we have some ethical principles. And the number one principle is to protect the rights and welfare of participants. That is what we call autonomy, protection of the rights and welfare of participants. Sometimes, if I want to do research to know the effect of insurgency in Borno on people there, I can only do that research if I'm there to ask questions from people there. But in research, you need to protect the right of that people and the welfare of the people that you are doing the research with, the participant in your research. Understand? So that is where you will need an informed consent and self-determination. You let them understand the reason why you are doing the research. If they agree to follow in your research, you proceed. But you don't need to force them. You don't need to force them because you are doing your research. So the first one is protect the right and the welfare of the participant. That's the autonomy. The second one is to protect the researcher and the institution. Because if you are protecting the people you are questioning for your research, you also need to protect yourself. It's not because you are trying to do research to understand the effect of insurgency in Borno that you will go and find yourself at the den of these terrorists. You know that if you go to at the den of this terror, you go to the camp of these terrorists, they might kidnap you. So you need to protect yourself. Listen, so the protection matters a lot. Because if questions are later raised, who asked you to go to the bush? Is it because you want to do your project that you are going to the bush to ask questions? So you need to protect yourself as a researcher. Protect the researcher, and it's not only the researcher you are only protecting, you are also protecting the institution, that is the schools you are representing, or the organization, the university. Because they are going to ask you, people are going to ask, if anything happened to you as a researcher, they are going to ask you, which university approved this unethical research? Listen, that is number 2. Number 3, ethical issues in research is to minimize the likelihood of negligence claim. Minimize the likelihood of negligence claim. That is, in a way that if a research participant is armed in the course of your study, you are doing research, and maybe somebody is armed or is wounded. So there is going to be a problem. There is going to be a problem. So in research, you need to know the risks. Demonstrate that the risk you involve is minimal, is not much. You need to know. You need to put out when the risk involved is not much. Listen. So
sorry, sir, all these ones are under autonomy?
No, I'm in number 3.
Okay. That's the veracity.
I'm in number 3. I say to minimize the likelihood of negligence claim. That is, you should not allow the participant involved in your research to be armed. And so you should not allow anybody to be harmed at the course of your study. Whenever you are doing your research, nobody should be harmed. Understand? And another one is privacy and confidentiality. That is, each people involved in your research, you must be able to control their identity, listen, and know when it is necessary to share their identity. That is why you will see some interview in the TV whereby they cover the face of the people that are interviewing. Listen, they cover. That is why sometimes you read the news, you will see that they are mentioning anonymous. They will say anonymous. They will not mention the name of the person. They will put anonymous. Listen, so that means you need to protect the people you are interviewing. Another ethical issues, another ethical principle is that you need justice and fairness. Justice and fairness, listen, must be on all participants. If you are doing research on females and male, listen, you need to do justice and fairness. Or maybe you are using 100 people in your research, you must have like 50 male, 50 females. Justice and fairness. No group should be unfairly treated. So no, justice and fairness. And also, you must respect vulnerable persons. That is, the old, the young, the sick, or mentally impaired people. You must give them the respect at the course of your research when you are doing your research. Listen, you must also respect the vulnerable people involved in your research. And there must be truthfulness. Another one is veracity. Veracity is truthfulness. Must be involved in your research. It means that the researcher must be honest with participants about the nature and the purpose of the research. If you are doing research on something and you're interviewing people, if they ask you, why are you interviewing us? Tell them the reason why you are interviewing them. Don't lie because you need information from them. You give them the right informations. Son, I've talked about privacy, fairness, okay, justice. I've talked about justice also. I've talked about like arms and benefit, arms and benefit balance. That is everybody involved in the research, understand, must know how must not be harmed. You must be able to predict if there is going to be harm or not. So they must not be harmed. Physical risk should be minimized. Anything that is going to cause any physical risk should be minimized. And son, so question before we proceed, please. Can we proceed? Can we proceed?
Yes, please.
Yeah, if you don't understand, you can ask question. We are here together. I know some of you like reading at night, so that means we are studying together. So now we want to look at qualitative and quantitative research. We did not go deep there. Now we want to go deeper on qualitative and quantitative research. Listen. So now we'll take qualitative research. You see, qualitative research has 7 approaches. Listen, it has 7 approaches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So for you to understand qualitative research, from the definition to how it is done, so we are going to use these 7 concepts you can see in my slide. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, you are going to use these 7 concepts you are seeing in my slide. Listen. Now, ethnography. We are going to look at ethnography. That's an ethnography aspect of qualitative research. Ethnography. Before we go to ethnography, what is qualitative research? Based on your understanding, what do you understand by qualitative research? What do you understand by qualitative research? What do you understand by we are studying? What do you understand by qualitative research?
I
So,
was saying it involves the collecting, interpreting, and analyzing of unstructured data such as words, images, and sounds.
Yeah, feelings also is there. You need to add feelings also. Feelings also is there. Feelings and emotions. Thank you. That's a point. So we have different ways of defining them. So now we want to talk about qualitative research. I think I would use now qualitative research. When you talk about qualitative research, understanding the ethnography, from the slide you can see we say different qualitative approach reflect different worldview and influence dissemination choice. So there is no correct approach. Choose based on your research question. So which means that in qualitative research, we have 7 approach you can use. So we say ethnography. And we say ethnography comes from the Greek word ethno, which means for people. While writing graphia or graphy is writing. So literally, ethnography means portrait of people. That is, when a researcher uses ethnography qualitative type, it tries to capture the character, the essential characters of people. Listen, so ethnographic research, that is an approach of qualitative research, is usually aimed to produce a rich, detailed, contextual explanation of a particular group of people. Listen, so you are trying to explain it, you are trying to explain based on a certain group of people. Why are more those traveling to Italy? Why are Edo people traveling to Italy? Because in Nigeria now, most people that are traveling to Italy are from Edo. Are from Edo. Most of them are other tribes also travel, but Edo's they are more in Italy. Why? So you are trying to understand the participant, the people involved in this particular. So ethnography is trying to understand the portray of people, the characteristics of people. That is using the approach of ethnography. So after the ethnography, we have the grounded theory. I know they might be boring, but you just need to have an idea of them one after the other. Research is usually a bit tricky compared to other courses, but try to have an idea. Understand? So the grounded theory, with the grounded theory, you develop as a researcher, you develop new theory through concurrent data collection. So which means that you use this approach by basing your focus on data, available data, to develop a theory and analyze that theory. For my slide, we say that the grounded theory uses theoretical sampling and constant comparative method. You use sample available, you data available as a researcher, and then you compare it with existing knowledge. The central idea of grounded theory is to let theory emerge from the data you have. All the theory we are having currently come from some informations. So if a researcher is using grounded theory to do his research, its aim is to get a new theory come out from existing information. Understand? That is about grounded theory. If you don't understand, tell me you go back and we go back. The third one is the interpretative, the IPA. Let's just say the IPA. The interpretative phenomenological analysis, IPA, the IPA. That is an approach of research methodology, a qualitative research methodology. With the IPA, you combine two commitments. The researcher combine two commitments. And what is the commitment? The primary object of study and the subject experience. You look at two things. What is the primary objective of this study? And what is the final outcome that the researcher aimed at achieving? So with the IPA approach, the researcher is tend to explore how participants make sense of experience. How participants make sense of experience. Normally, the IPA method is usually used in nursing and psychology, not in social science. It is not used in social science. But it is usually, in this type of approach, the researcher uses small sample. It uses small sample and in-depth interview to analyze a particular phenomenon. The next approach is the discourse analysis. With the discourse analysis, It is usually based on the insight that language does not merely describe the world it constructs, which means that sometimes the language, if a researcher means something, the language might not explain what it means. The word we use, the category we employ it, or the metaphor we use it also influence the research. Because if you say something now, how other people interpret it or how they see it is different. So with the discourse analysis, you are trying to look at the content aspects, the contextual meaning of the research and the results. The next one is the conversational analysis. Conversational analysis. The conversational analysis specifically focuses on social organization of natural occurring conversation. You are trying to do your research based on previous conversation of a particular leader. Maybe Tinubu has done 10 meetings. You try to understand the pattern of his meeting, the conversation he has in different meetings, to know, to predict his next meeting, how he's going to do the conversation. Why the content analysis is you look at the words, the content. The conversational analysis, you look at the conversational aspect of the particular phenomenon, leaders or persons, but the content analysis, you look at the how do you call the discussion, the content, maybe in a document, in a manual, in a book, in a newspaper, how the pattern of conversation or content is occurring repetitively. Why the narrative analysis, you focus on how the stories or the analysis is being done by people. The narration, how narration is being portrayed. These are the 7 approaches to do qualitative research. It might not be important, but just have an idea about it. You know the meaning, just have a little idea. So whenever you are explaining what is qualitative research in the exam, you can use the knowledge you have here to buttress your explanation of qualitative research. You can say qualitative research, sometimes it analyzes the content, it analyzes conversations, narrative, discourse, and the likes. Question before I proceed to the next one, to the next slide. Before I proceed to the next slide, can I proceed to the next slide? Am I the only one here? The class is silent too. Because I'm not, you are not seeing my face.
You're already on the next slide.
Because you are not seeing my face. We are revising together, so it's going to be slow. It's going to be slow. I know research is a bit complicated, but we are going to do our best to make it easier for us. Now, statistic in research. Statistic in research. Now, this question, first case of measurement. There is a past question. I think did I share the past question with you? Did I share the past question with you? There is one question I say, explain the first case of measurement of SS Steven. Did you have it in your past question, please? Hello? Am I the only one here?
Not
I'm not.
true.
What do you say?
Don't have that.
We are
No.
here. We are here. Go on.
No, there is one document I share with you. There is one document I share with you like this. First case of measurement of SS Steven. The use of statistics. I don't know. I want to share the document. You can check the notes again. I want to share it. Please just check the group again. I want to share it. Okay. Just share the group again, please. If you look at the group, the document I share, open the document, you see team number 1, quantitative and qualitative research. They ask us to define what is research or qualitative research, explain quantitative research, mention and discuss 5 characteristics of qualitative and quantitative research, and the differences between qualitative and quantitative research. I think we've talked about all what is here about qualitative and quantitative research. It's like they are frequent questions. Qualitative, quantitative, qualitative. So they are frequent questions. Now, this particular slide I'm showing you, there is one question on that. The question is on, open that document I sent you. Go to page 5. Page 5 of that document I just shared to the group. Page 5. The question is on variable hypothesis and measurements. It was in May 2023 weekend. They said explain 4 levels of measurements. Explain 4 levels of measurements. So I didn't explain it. I just list the measurement, the levels of measurement. I just list the levels of measurement. Now we are going to explain the 4 levels of measurement here now. Are we tired? The class is too is too calm. If you are tired, let me know.
Not tired.
Okay. Now, first case of measurement by Stanley Smith Stephen, S.S. Stephen. So this measurement, they are used in research and statistics to classify data according to the natural and amount of information they contain. And therefore, we have the nominal scale, ordinal scale, interval scale, and the ratio scale. When we say,
come again with the preamble.
Okay, we say the first scale of measurement of S.S. Stephen, they are used in research and statistics to classify data according to the nature and the amount of information they contain. Understand? They are used to classify data, information according to the nature of the information. That is, maybe you want to group people. Maybe you can group them by their age. You can group them by the sex, maybe female or male. You can group them by their height. So you classify the data according to the nature and the amount of information they contain. The number 1 is the nominal scale. Nominal scale level of measurement is the simplest levels of measurement because it's used for classification or naming purposes only. Listen, it is usually used for classification or purposes only. Data are usually grouped into category without any other ranking. Listen, example, you can group gender, and you know gender, we have 2 gender, male and female. Religion, you can say Christian, Muslim, traditional religion. Nationality, you can say Nigeria, Ghanaian, Kenya. Political party, you can say PDP, APC, NDC, ADC, APM. You see, so with the nominal scales of measurement, you just try to classify people. You just classify a group. You understand? The characteristics of this nominal scale, data are placed into categories or groups. Data are placed into categories or groups. And also, there is no ranking or order. You don't rank them. If you classify male and female, you don't say female are bigger than male or male are bigger than no. You just classify based on the gender. If you classify political party, PDP, APC, ADC, just classify. You don't say one is bigger than the other. You just classify them based on what they have. Another one is, the another characteristic are numbers assigned are merely labeled. For instance, now, if I want to classify political party and I put ADC number 1, PDP number 2, NDC number 3, APC number 4, I just put this number just to label it. Not that the one I put at number 1 is bigger than the one I put at number 4. No. So with this, what do you call? With this nominal scale, the number do not mean that one party or one classification is bigger or is greater than the other one. So one thing you need to understand is that nominal measurement help researcher organize and classify information for easy analysis. Because as a researcher, you might need to classify the data you have at hand. The second classification is ordinal scale, ordinal level of measurement. We have nominal, which is number 1. The second one is ordinal level of classification or measurements. The ordinal level or the ordinal scale goes beyond classification. You don't classify here, you go far from classification. So with the ordinal level, the researcher go beyond that classification only level by arranging data in order or rank. Understand? You arrange them in order or rank. Understand? However, in this kind of scale, in this kind of measurement, the exact difference between rank is not known. Listen, characteristics of ordinal classification. Data can be ranked. You rank the data, maybe 1, 2, 3. In the example now, in the classroom, first position, second position, third position. Listen, number 2 characteristics is that the ordinal scale shows the relative positions. It shows the positions. It shows the positions. Listen, number 3 is that it shows the differences between rank. Listen, as the differences between rank are not equal or measurable. For instance, if I say first position, second position, or third position, so we might not know the distance between the first position and the second position. We might not know the differences between the two. Maybe the first position got 60, while the second position got 50, or maybe 30. But yeah, you are just going with the ordinal measurement. We use it usually in survey, opinion poll, social sciences research, where ranking is necessary. Now, the third one is the interval level of measurement. Interval levels of measurement. With the interval level of measurement, that one measure data with meaningful and equal interval between value. You look at the intervals between values. Unlike ordinal, we say the ordinal, the differences in interval scale, the differences between the number can be calculated in interval. But in ordinal, you cannot calculate the differences between the numbers. Understand? For instance, now the interval between 10 and 20, you know the intervals. The interval between 21 and 30, you can know the interval easily. Understand? Now? When you say the difference between the 20 degrees Celsius and 30 degrees Celsius, you already know the differences. So the interval scales is important to because it allows the researcher to perform more advanced statistical analysis. Now, the third one is the ratio scale. The ratio scale of measurements, that one is the highest and the most accurate level of measurement. Is the highest and the most accurate level of measurement. Because with the ratio scale, it possesses all the quality of nominal, ordinal, and interval. It has all the information of nominal, ordinal, and interval. Listen. Now, characteristics of a ratio scale. The data can be classified and ranked. And the data, number 2 is that the data can show equal intervals. And all mathematical operations are possible, including multiplication and division, which means that with the ratio, you use all, maybe the nominal, the ordinal, the interval, use it in your research. So the ratio measurement provides the most precise information we need to know whenever we want to do measurement in a research. Now, in conclusion, what we need to understand is the SS-Steven 4 level of measurement. That one provides us the foundation for data collection and statistical analysis. Data collection and statistical analysis. Listen, it helps us to collect data and analyze the data. That is about the SS-Steven 4 scales of measurement. Now, it's 10 p.m. We are going to treat past questions now. The remaining topics, we are going to look at previous questions on the remaining topics. Are we tired?
No, we're not.
Okay, we are going to look at past question on the remaining topics so that we are not going to treat it as a class, but we are going to treat it as previous question. So this topic we have is identifying and defining research problem. Do anyone have previous past question with them? The one I sent you now is just like I want to check with MIAD 801. Do anybody have past question over there with them? Anyone in the group, please? Anyone in the group? Do you have past question? Hello? Hello? MIAD 801.
Hello.
I have it on my laptop, but I don't know if I can show you here. Let me try to. I want to try to share my slide to the past question and answer. We are going to look at past question. There were those past questions, not the past question and answer. So we are going to trade the past questions, and then we use 1 hour 30 minutes to trade the past questions. Can you see my slide on my screen?
Not yet.
Okay. So I want us to trade past question to see how they comes out. Can you see this one now? I don't know if you can see the right one.
It's loading.
Okay, just let me know if
Yeah.
you can see. The right one. I'm seeing now. Just let me. What are you seeing? What are you seeing on your hand there?
Explain quantitative.
Okay.
Quantitative research.
Now, so the next topic we want to look at is the research problem aspect. So when you look at question number 3, it talks about what do you understand by research problem? Discuss 5 steps of problem formulation in research. That's the topic. So anybody here, what do you understand by research problem? Anybody to define research problem for us? What is research problem based on your understanding?
Research problem is a specific issue that the research tends to find a solution to.
Okay. Specific issue that researcher wants to find a solution to. Another person? Another person, please.
I can say is a clear, specific, and researchable issue or gap that requires investigation.
So, okay, you mentioned gap that require investigation. Another person, please. Another person. So I like the second information, the second definition where you mentioned the gaps. So a research problem is a specific issue, gap in knowledge, or area of concern that a researcher intends to investigate and provide solution to thorough systematic study. That is the issues the researcher wants to investigate, the gap in knowledge the researcher wants to investigate, or the difficult aspect the researcher wants to investigate. Listen, but when he's doing that one, those one that you want to investigate, it has a motive, and the motive is the intention, the intent is to investigate and provide solution to thorough systematic process. So the research problem is the central question or challenge that give direction to the entire research process. Because without a research problem, the research itself is not going to have a direction. Listen, so usually in research, a problem arises when there is lack of adequate information, contradicting findings, practical issue that needs solution, or when there is gap between existing knowledge and what ought to exist. Understand now? So usually a good research supposed to be clear and specific, researchable, relevant to the field of study, and visible within available time and resources. Am I communicating? Let me give an example now. I will give an example now.
Sorry, can you
Sorry,
come
please.
again?
Sorry, please, can you repeat yourself?
Okay. We say research problem is a specific issue, gap in knowledge, or area of concern that the researcher intends to investigate. That particular thing that the researcher wants to investigate on, that is a research problem. So it can be that there is a gap in knowledge, that is something is missing regarding previous research, or there is a particular issue that the researcher wants to focus on, or there is a concern, an area of concern that the researcher wants to focus on. So the researcher is going, the intention is to investigate it. After investigating, you don't just investigate a problem, you investigate a problem and provide solution through systematic study. And we say that usually whenever we say that is a research has problem, the problem occur when there is contradicting findings, or when there is lack of inadequate information, or lack of adequate information rather, when the information available is not more enough, or when there is gap between existing knowledge and what ought to exist. So your research problem must usually, a good research problem must be cleared and specific, must be researchable, must be relevant to the field of study you are researching, and must be feasible within available time and resources. Let me give you an example now. Let's say youth unemployment continue to increase despite government empowerment program. We know that every year the government will do empowerment program for the youth. But why is it that unemployment continue every year also? That means that there is a problem somewhere. So that thing I mentioned now becomes a research problem because it raises question that why is it that the rate of unemployment increase every year despite the availability of government empowerment program? That means there is a research problem. We've gotten our research problem. That is a concern. That is a concern that the researcher will need to investigate and provide solution through systematic study. Now, the question now say, the 5B now say, discuss the 5 steps of problem formulation in a research. How do we formulate research problem? And when we say problem formulation, this refers to the process of identifying, defining, and developing the research problem clearly and systematically. How do we identify the problem? How do we define the problem? How did we develop the problem to something that is clear and systematic? Listen, we have 5 steps. The number 1 step is identification of the broad area of study. Identification of the broad area of study. Listen, that is, the first step is to select a general area of interest. You select a general area of interest. It can be on unemployment, it can be on the foreign policy, it can be on diplomacy, security, international trade. So select a general topic in a particular area. So this general topic you are selecting usually come from personal interest, academic discipline, professional experience, or social issues or previous studies. It's like you want to write project in second semester, but you don't know the type of project, the question you want to do, they write your project on. But you have interest in security, maybe because you are a soldier. You have interest in security. That means you've identified a broad area of study. So based on the top interest you have in security, that is the first step. You now proceed to the next second step to identify a problem that you are going to do your research on. Especially you people most of us that are doing international affairs and diplomacy. Some of my topic might be on maybe foreign policy, security, diplomacy, international affairs. Listen. So if you're in that, at this first stage, your topic is broad, not yet specific. The second stage is the preliminary investigation of the problem. That is where you do your preliminary work. Because after identifying your broad area, as a researcher, you conduct a preliminary investigation to understand the nature of the issue. This will usually involve you reading books or journal, or by observing things in your area, or by discussion with experts, or by reviewing previous studies or books by leaders. So at this second stage, or second step, the purpose is to discover existing gaps, unanswered questions, and areas requiring further research. Understand? For instance, let me give you an example now. Let me give you an example for you to picture it. So a researcher studying diplomacy, like we like this, that we are studying international affairs and diplomacy. Anyone can discover that there is a little research on the role of digital diplomacy in Africa. Because there is something we call digital diplomacy, but not being practiced as it is practiced in Africa. It is not being practiced well as it is in practice in Europe and other parts of the world. So it's a problem. That is, the digital diplomacy is not being exploited by our Minister of Foreign Affairs in Africa. Listen, so this is a problem. This is based on your investigation, you've noted that one. So it will not help you narrow the problem. That is the third step. The top step is narrowing and defining the problem. Narrowing and defining the problem. Narrowing and defining the problem. That's the third step. You are narrowing and defining the problem. So at this stage, the broad issue is defined into clear and manageable research problems. That is, what you get in number 1, you now define it clearly. Listen, that is, in this third stage, that is where the researcher will specify the exact issue, the scope, the population or location, or the variable involved. Listen, so usually a well-defined problem should usually state what the study seeks to investigate. I'll give you an example for you to understand. Now, let's say a broad topic. Let's say a broad topic. Let's say the number 1 topic that we have. The broad topic is digital diplomacy in Africa. Digital diplomacy in Africa. That is the broad topic. Now, if we want to narrow this, if we want to turn it to the third step, we'll say the impact of social media diplomacy on Nigeria foreign relations between 2015 and 2023. Now, you know that we've changed it. We've seen the problem from digital diplomacy in Africa. We now narrow it to the impact of social media diplomacy on Nigeria foreign relations between 2015 and 2023, which means that we've narrowed it. We've make it to be researchable. We make the study focused and researchable. Because if you say diplomacy, digital diplomacy in Africa, Africa is big. Is big. So you need to specify it by location. Maybe it's Africa, Ghana, maybe Togo, Nigeria, by location. You need to also state the date you want to evaluate for your research. And you need to tell us what exactly you want to research, or the scope, the population, the location, the date, the issues, the exact issues. After the third stage or the third step, come the fourth step, number 4. That is where you are going to do formulation of your research objective and your research questions. Research objectives and your research questions. That is where you are going to do your research objectives and your research questions. Research objectives and your research question. That is where you are going to do your research objective and your research question. Now, with the research objective, with the research objective and research question, understand? Sorry, which number are we? Number 4, B. Hello?
Number 4.
Okay. So with the research objective and the research formulation, because after you are done with the number 3, that you've clearly defined, you've clearly showed the thing you want to study on. Listen, once the problem is clearly defined, the next thing is to talk about to develop the objectives of your research, the questions you want to ask. Because this is going to guide the study and determine the kind of data you need to collect. Let me give an example now. We are using an example of how do you call it? Digital diplomacy. So now, research objective. That is at the end of your research, the objective of your research is to examine the role of social media in Nigerian foreign relations. That is an objective. That is, you want to examine. You use verbs. You use some verbs, some action words here. You want to examine the role of social. With the research objective, you use verbs. You want to show, to examine the role of social media in Nigeria foreign relation. But when you come to the research question, you will ask question with the research question with a question mark. How has the social media influenced Nigerian diplomatic relation? That is a question. That's the research question. How has the social media influenced Nigerian diplomatic relation? So this research problem will now turn it into an that question we ask now and the objective will now turn it into an investigable question. That is, how has social media influenced Nigerian diplomatic relation? After the fourth step come the last step, the fifth one. That is where you are going to do evaluation and feasibility of the problem. You evaluate your problem and you study the problem. Listen. So now you try to assess whether your research problem, the last step, you try to assess whether your research problem is practical and worth studying. At that time, the researcher will consider the availability of data, time, cost, research skill, ethical consideration. So usually, when your research is good, when your research problem is good, understand, it should be able to contribute to available knowledge or existing knowledge, and it should be able to be significant and achievable. Listen, so because there are some, if your research is not feasible, like if you cannot evaluate, if you cannot get data on it, it's going to be difficult. Let me give you an example now. There are some government information that are classified. There are some documents on government that are classified we call it classified document. So if you are doing your research on those classified documents, it will be difficult for you to have access to this document, which is going to make it not to be feasible as a student. In second semester, MIAD 812, one of our lecturers gave us assignment that we should go to an embassy and we should interview the ambassador in the embassy. Which some embassy will allow you to enter and interrogate them. Some embassy will not allow you. In Nigeria, most of my classmates, they were not able to do that assignment. Because there are some research you will do that you will not be able to get the data that you need because they might be classified data. So in essence, what you need to understand is that a research problem is the foundation of every research work. The research problem is the foundation of every research work because it identifies the issue the researcher intends to investigate. It identifies the issue the researcher intends to investigate. Now, that is about that question now. Now, in some question, you see that 1B, that 3B, where they say we should talk about the 5 steps of research problem formulation. In some question, you might see it as 3. You might see it as 3. They will say 3 problem from the step of 3 problem formulation. So when you see it as 3, look at look at question. Look at this question. This past question. Somebody should read question 3 for us. 3B here. Somebody should read question 3B here. Do we have hello?
Mention and discuss 3 steps that guide problem definition.
Yes, no. So that is the other one is problem research problem. Understand? This one they are telling what is the importance of problem definition and the step that guide problem definition. It's still on the same topic we are looking at. Should we proceed, please? Or should we stop?
We can
Go on,
continue.
please.
We can
Okay.
continue.
If you have question, you can ask. So in case you don't understand, please. You know you have the exam tomorrow. Now, 3 steps that guide problem definition. Number 1 step is to identify the problem. Number 2 step is to understand and analyze the problem, while the third one is defining and stating the problem clearly. Now, we are going to explain it. I will say number 1, identifying the problem. Number 2, understanding and analyzing the problem, while number 3 is defining and stating the problem clearly. Listen, now, number 1, identifying the problem. Identifying the problem. This is the first step where the researcher recognizes the existence of issue, gap, or area requiring investigation. That is the first step where you know the problem, where you try to see, okay, it's like something is wrong with this thing. No, that is where you try to do the research to understand the aspects. Listen. So usually the problem may arise from personal observation or previous research or social or academic issues. Or it can be practical challenge in your society. So this first step that guide the research problem, listen, it helps the researcher, the researcher determine the general area of concern. The researcher might look like, okay, we are not exploring the digital aspect. Look at most of our senator or House of Rep or commissioner. Most of them, they don't have functional social media, which is a problem because they are not communicating what they are doing. So you look at it and as a problem. And so you can look at it, okay, this is a problem. So why are they not using social media? Are they old school or what is happening? Or they don't know how to use social media? So, example, now let me give you an example now. A researcher may observe increasing cybercrime among youth despite government regulation. Yahoo is too much in Nigeria nowadays. Before, people usually hide themselves. Those people doing fraud, before they usually hide themselves. But now, secondary school students, if they are doing Yahoo. So you might be asking yourself that despite having EFCC and all these regulations, there is an increased rate of cybercrime among youth in Nigeria. That is, you identify the problem. The second is understanding and analyzing the problem. After you've done identifying your problem as a researcher, you study it carefully. You study that problem carefully to understand the causes, the nature, the scope, the effect, and the existing gaps in knowledge. Listen, that is a stage where, as a researcher, you are going to involve reviewing your literatures, like books, consulting experts, or gathering information. So the aim of this second step is to clearly understand what exactly needs to be investigated. What do you need to investigate? Listen, example now, with the second example, with the second step. So the second step, that is where the researcher may analyze, like the researcher may analyze the factors contributing to cybercrime. At the second stage, the researcher may try to analyze the factor contributing to cybercrime, such as unemployment, poverty, weak cybercrime law in the country. So after the second stage come the third stage, which is defining and stating the problem clearly. Defining and stating the problem clearly. Defining and stating the problem clearly. Yes, so that's the final step. That is where the researcher is going to transform the broad issue into a specific one, clearly and researchable. That is where the researcher will define the exact focus. Where is he focusing his study to? The population or the area, the time, the scope, the limitations. Because a properly defined problem usually gives direction to the research. Example, you can come up with an investigation into the relationship between youth unemployment and cybercrime in Nigeria from 2015 to 2026. That means that research that you've defined it, that from your second point where you understand or analyze your problem, you've tried to bring out a correct research problem that needs investigations. Understand? So these are the 3 steps involved that guides that guide problem definitions. Can we proceed? If you have questions, let me know before we proceed.
Sorry, I didn't get the third one.
Thank you very much. I like that. The third one is to defining and stating the problem clearly. You define and state the problem clearly. Defining and stating the problem clearly. Yes, and so that is where the researcher will usually change the broad topic into specific topic. The broad topic is cybercrime among youth in Nigeria, in Africa, or cybercrime among youth. That is a broad topic. But with the third step, is going to bring that broad topic into specific, clear, and researchable problem statement. That is going to bring it into something that is researchable by stating maybe the time or the limitation, the population, the area of study, the focus. Because if your research problem is properly defined, it's going to guide you in doing your research. That's why I give an example now. I say an investigation into the relationship between youth unemployment and cyber crime in Nigeria from 2015 to 2026. The broad topic was cybercrime among youth in Nigeria, or cybercrime in Nigeria. That's a broad topic, but we bring it down to something that can be investigated. The time, 2015, 2026. Youth and unemployment, what is the relationship? What is the relationship between these two variables? Sorry, unemployment and cybercrime, what is the relationship between these two variables? Do they have any correlation? Any hypothesis to buttress any of these correlations? Based on your research, then you can then conclude. You cannot bring out a conclusion of, okay, they have correlation or not correlations. Understand? So that is about that one. So we'll proceed now. What is research sample? Let us look at research sample. We've looked at research problem. So what is research sample? Anybody to help us? Anybody to help us with the answer? What is research sample? Anybody to help us?
Okay, I would say it's the process of selecting like a representative group from the total number of the population, just to know about that population.
Thank you very much. That's the point. That's the point. Selecting from a larger group, okay? Another contribution? I know we are all tired. I know it is late, but you have the exam tomorrow. So any other contribution? Okay, let me take it now. When you say research sample, a research sample is a smaller group selected from a larger population for the purpose of research. A smaller group selected from a larger population for the purpose of research. Because if you want to do the topic I gave you last time for the last of the research, you say an investigation into the relationship between youth unemployment and cybercrime in Nigeria from 2018 to 2015. If you want to do this type of research, is it possible to interview all the people living in Nigeria? Over 300 million people living in Nigeria. Is it possible to interview all of us? It's not possible. So what you are going to employ, you use your sample from a larger population. You use a sample from the larger population. Because it is usually very difficult, expensive, and time-consuming to study an entire population. So what you do as a researcher, you use representative portion. And that representative portion is what we call sample, research sample. That is what we call research sample. So the sample is expected to reflect the characteristics of the whole population so that the conclusion you are giving from it is going to be generalized. If anybody say, I'm trying to study the effect of unemployment on the youth in Borno State, for instance, now, I'm just giving an example. If you're in Borno State, you cannot interrogate all the people in Borno, but you are going to take some youth, a sample in the population, and you are going to use that one to generalize your how do you call your research. Understand now? If I want to another example, if I want to study as a researcher, if I want to study the academic performance of all the students in MIAD, you understand? The academic performance of all the students in MIAD, maybe in MIAD in ABUDLC, and in MIAD alone, we are more than 800. In your set, maybe you are more than 3. In my own set, we are up to 500. So it may not be possible to study every student because we are all of us, we are not in the same location. Some are in Nigeria, some are in America, some are in South Africa, some are in UK. So what you are going to do as a researcher, you may select a portion. Maybe you can select like 50 or 60 or 70 as your sample. The characteristics of a good sample. The characteristics of a good sample. Number one, adequate in size. Adequate in size. Number two, free from biases. Free from bias. That is, when you want to select people, you should not select it based on your interest. You select them based on the characteristics they share with the general group. If you are doing research on the MIAD student, academic performance of MIAD student, you just select those that are doing MIAD. You don't select maybe this one, they are my people. No. So number three, representative of the population. That is, those you are selecting, they must have the characteristics of the general population. Number 4, scientifically selected. You select them scientifically. You follow due process. We are going to, there's a question we had on that one, in one of the past question. If time permits, we are going to look at it. That is how the selection is being done. How the selection is being done. There are different ways the selection is being done. I think that's one of the past question here. So now the past question say we should talk about the guideline, or what is the question again? Explain the guideline for constructing a research tool. The guidelines of constructing a research tool. The guideline. So the guideline for constructing a research tool. Number 1, guidelines. So you should know that there is one thing is that when it comes to so research tool. Whenever you hear research tool, you should know that a research tool is like research instrument. You might see it in a past question as research instrument or as research tool. So this one refers to the device used for collecting data in research. That is what the researcher used to collect information, data. What the researcher used to collect data. You understand? So did I say the guideline for constructing a good research tool? So it's how do you call the example of the thing? Maybe questionnaire, interview, observation, checklist, test, and rating. Now they just ask us to say the guideline for constructing a research tool. How can you construct your questionnaire? How can you construct your interview? How can you construct your checklist or your text and rating scales? So as a researcher, to ensure validity and reliability, you need to construct a research tools. Number 1, clearly define the objective of your research. That's the first guideline for constructing your research. When you define your objective and the purpose of your study, you will be able to know which research tool is best. Because there are some research you need interview. There are some research you don't need interview. So the researcher must understand the purpose of the study before designing a research tool or research instrument. Listen, if you are trying to study, example now, if the study focus on diplomatic conflict, like the one happening in Iran and Israel, if you want to focus on diplomatic conflict resolution, your research question should address diplomacy and conflict issue only. Don't talk about trade. Don't talk about economic diplomacy or any other type of diplomacy. You should just focus on that diplomacy and conflict issue only. That's the first step. The second step is the second guideline. After defining your objective and your purpose of your study, the second is to identify the type of information needed. Which type of information do you need? So the researcher, as a researcher, you determine what data are required. Who will provide the data to you? And how the data will be collected. So if you are able to answer that one, it's going to help you in selecting the most appropriate instrument or tools or research tools. Listen, so if you want to do a research on maybe that is based on attitude or opinion of people, you use questionnaire. But if you want to study the behavior, that one is not going to require questionnaire. You use observations. So each research questions that you have is going to determine the type of research tools you are going to use. Number 3 guideline is the use of simple and clear language. Using simple and clear language. Because your question should be easy to understand, free from ambiguity, and appropriate to anybody, regardless of his educational level. Listen now. I'll give you two examples now. One example is, do you perceive governmental inefficiency in socio-economic restructuring? Look at this example. Do you perceive governmental inefficiency in socio-economic restructuring? That's one example. Number two example is, do you think government policy improve the economy? Which one is poor example, or which one is better example? Should I repeat myself? It's like if people are tired.
Repeat it. Sorry, can you repeat it?
Yeah. So we are trying to talk about, as a researcher, you should use simple and clear example so that it's going to guide you in constructing your research tool or research instruments. So, and I give two example of two language. The first language is, do you perceive governmental inefficiency in social economic restructuring? That's one example. The second example is, do you think government policy improve the economy? Which one is simple to understand among these two examples?
The second one.
The second one is simple to understand because it does not use big. So anyone that is someone that does not have an higher education can understand what you mean. Well, once you use big grammar, it's become ambiguous. So the person you want to interrogate will find it very difficult to understand your question. Understand? Number 4 is to ensure questions are relevant. That is, your research question should be relevant to the study. Because irrelevant question will usually waste the times of the researcher and may confuse those respondents, that is, those people you want to question. Listen. So, and the last one is avoid leading and biases question. Avoid any question that is going to, question that is going to influence respondent toward a particular answer. That is, the question should not be biased. It should be free from leading them into particular answers. Listen. So, that is where I think I'm going to stop on these questions. Should we take one last question and stop, or should we stop? What do you suggest? What do you suggest?
Sorry, please. What was the third one you said? Sorry, the third. After use of sample and simple and clear language. What was the next guide you stated?
Ensure questions are relevant. The question you want to put in place as a researcher, it should be relevant to the study. It should be relevant to your study. So I want you to, before you sleep, if it's possible, I want you to go and do what is literature review. And literature review. Functions of literature review. Go and do one. Go and do that one on yourself. Look at the past question that you are seeing on your screen. It says, explain why research with human participants require ethical approval. We've done ethical approval already. So if you look at question number 1, we've done it. Qualitative and quantitative research, we've done that one. So ethical approval, we've done that one. Research problem. Look, go and read the literature review. Is important. Is important. I want to look at one past question to see what we did not study, so that we can take that one. Research problem. As you can see, research problem is common question. We've talked about sampling already. So there's one question. Look at this question. Question number 1 of this past question. Somebody should read it. I want to be sure you are not sleeping, or because I don't want to be talking to myself soliloquy. So somebody should read it.
Discuss the two major categories of sampling.
Yeah, that is where we are going to stop sampling. So now, two categories. We've talked about sampling already. Two categories of sampling. We have two categories of sampling, and each category has its own example also. Listen. So, number one category of sampling is probability sampling. Probability sampling. While the other category is non-probability sampling. Probability sampling and non-probability sampling. So probability sampling and non. So one thing is when we say sampling, there is one question that say what is sampling. Let me look at. I think I saw it. Look at question number 6 here. Question number 6 here. What is sampling? What is sampling? So let's define that one so that we can have an understanding about it. So sampling is the process of selecting. I think we've talked about that research sampling. So if you talk about research sampling, so we go back again. Sampling is a process of selecting a portion or of a population for study in order to make conclusion about an entire population. That is, you take a sample, you take a part from a general population for your study. So, and I've mentioned that because it is difficult sometimes to study an entire population. So, as a researcher, what you do, you take a sample, take a portion of that population to do your research. But the two questions they are asking you, the two categories of sampling, we have the probability and the non-probability. Now we take the probability and we will explain its type also. There are more, but that's the last part we are going to do for this night. Now, probability sampling. That's the last part we are going to do this night. I'm also tired, seriously. I want to sleep. I know I have an exam, but I will sleep. I'm that kind of a serious student that don't read. Now, probability sampling. You see, probability sampling is a sampling technique in which every member of a population has a known and equal chance of being selected for the study. Understand? So it's kind of sampling. Probability sampling is the type of sampling technique in which every member of a population has a known and equal chances of being selected for the study. So selection is usually based on random. It's usually based on random, making the method specific, scientific, and objectives. So it is usually used in quantitative research because it helps researchers make valid generalization from the sample to a larger population. You remember in secondary school, in primary school, the teacher is at the blackboard, and he wants to ask one student to come and answer the question at the blackboard. So what the teacher will usually do, the teacher will randomly pick out of maybe 50 students in the classroom. The teacher will randomly pick. So which means that all the students in the classroom have an equal chance or a known probability, a known or equal chance of being selected by the teacher to come and answer the question. Now, the characteristics of probability sampling. Number one characteristic of probability sampling: every member of the population has equal chance of selection. Every member of the population has equal chance of selection. Number two, selection is done through random method. Selection is done through random method. Number three, samples are usually representatives. Number four, it reduces researcher bias. it reduces researcher bias. Why number 5? Finding that's 4. Now, this probability sampling has its own also types of probability sampling. Types of probability sampling. I want to show one past question here. Types of probability sampling. Types of probability sampling. I want to show the past question. There's one question that types of probability sampling. Look at this question. Question number 4. You can. I don't know whether you are seeing it or just let me know if you can see it. Hello, can you see the question number 4?
We can.
So he said, well, can you please read it out, please?
It says compare and contrast the differences between probability and non-probability sampling.
You can see now. So that first question I show you say that you should say the 2 categories of sampling. But this one is saying that you should tell us the probability and non-probability. So you define, you say the characteristics, you talk about the types of each sampling. There are 2, but you define them, you say the characteristics, and you say the types of each 2. So number 1, types of probability sampling. We call it simple random sampling. That's number 1 type of probability sampling. Simple random sampling. So with the simple random sampling, we should know that one is the purest form of probability sampling, because every member of the population have an equal and independent chance of selection. It's like you are doing a lottery, and they put the name of people in a basket. They pick one person. They pick one person owns. So that is, everybody has equal chance. The teacher in the classroom that want to select somebody to come and answer the blackboard. That's a kind of sampling, random sampling, simple random sampling. Listen, in lottery, it happened in lottery. So example in this side, a researcher that is studying like 1,000 university students can write all the name of this 1,000 and randomly select 100 out of this 1,000. That is simple random sampling. After the simple random sampling, we have the systematic sampling, which is number 2 types of probability sampling. That's number 2 types of probability sampling. Systematic sampling. When you say systematic sampling, the researcher selects every 9th member from a population list after choosing a random starting point. Do you know? I don't know how to say this in every 9th. I'm saying I don't know how to read it out. So that's NTH. For instance, now we are studying 1,000 university students, and the researcher for the researcher to do justice, the researcher will choose number 10th, number 20th, number 30th, number 50th, 40th, 60th. Listen, every 10th, I don't know how to call it. We call it NTH. Every NTH number and TH. Listen now. So, what do you say? Hello, I thought somebody saying something. Okay, nobody's talking. So in this how do you call systematic sampling, the researcher focus on selecting every 10th. Understand? Maybe every out of 1,000 students, and you say you want 100 students. So you've selected your 100 students. After selecting your 100 students, now you now focus on doing the division, getting every 10th. The third one is the stratified sampling. Stratified sampling. STRATIFIED. Stratified sampling. So with the stratified sampling, the population you have, you divide them into group. And that group you are dividing them into is called strata. You divide them based on some characteristics, maybe the gender, the age, the religion, the department. Listen. So, for instance, now, if you divide it based on strata, you can say maybe you are 60 males or 40 females, or 60% are male, 40% are female. That means you divide it based on the gender. Listen. So, that is on the stratified method. That is the third type of probability sampling. The fourth one is the cluster sampling. Cluster sampling. So this one is you divide the population into cluster based on the geographical area or natural group. You divide them based on based on the geographical or natural group. That is the cluster sampling. For instance, now a researcher that is studying secondary school students in Nigeria, that kind of researcher may randomly select schools from different states instead of selecting individual students nationally. So you can just focus on some schools. So instead of focusing on particular state, just focusing on different states on cluster. So now that is about the probability sampling. Now comes in the non-probability sampling.
Please, I didn't get the second one. I didn't get that one. Sorry.
The second one. Which one? With the systematic sampling.
Yes, I didn't get that one.
So the systematic sampling, that is where the researcher will select every nth. That is N, small letter N, T, H. You know, when you read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so when you say third, fourth, you say fourth, right? Fourth, fifth. It ends with TH, right? It ends with TH. So fifth, seventh, eighth. So if the researcher decides that everybody that fall under 10th, I'm going to select them. Or everybody, maybe the researcher has like 10,000 students and they want to do research on 1,000 students. So he's going to do the researcher. Let me just do a mathematical calculation now. Let's say a population contains 1,000 people. And the researcher needs only 10 people, needs 100 people. The researcher needs only now 100 people. So the researcher is going to do 1,000 divided by 100, which is going to be 10, right? So now the researcher will put their name, all the 1,000 people, he will put their name, and he will going to be selecting on the 100 people, he's going to be selecting every people that fall on number 10. We have 1,000 people, but you need only 100. So you will not divide that 100. You divide them, you put them in like 100, 100, 100, 100. So 100 times 10, you separate them. So anybody that fall on number 10, that's the person you are going to use for your research. So anybody that fall on number 10, that's the person. So if you select anybody that fall on number 10, that is going to be your research. So that is, I don't know the name we call it, but I know we NTH, having 10th or having NTH. Listen, so I don't know whether you get that one like that. My explanation on that, I don't know whether you get that one.
Yes, thank you very much.
Welcome. Now, the next one we need to look at is a probability, non-probability. Non-probability also have four types. It also have 4 types. Understand now? Yeah, it has 4 types. Non-probability sampling. The probability sampling have 4 types. The non-probability has 4 types. Non-probability sampling. Non-probability sampling is the opposite of probability sampling. So in non-probability sampling, the sampling method in which members do not have equal chances of being selected. They do not have equal chances of being selected. So selection will usually depend on the purpose, the availability, the conveniences, the research judgments. So this non-probability sampling is commonly used in qualitative research, where it's commonly used in qualitative research. The other one is used in quantitative research, while this one is used in qualitative research. The characteristics of non-probability sampling: selection is non-random. Selection is non-random. Easier and cheaper. Limited generalization. Researcher bias may occur. Some population member may have no chance of selection. Now, we'll try to do that's where we are going to stop. You say I'm tired. Now, types of non-probability sampling. Number one, convenience sampling. Convenience sampling. Convenience sampling. So, in convenience sampling, the participants are selected based on ease of accessibility, availability or access. So, in this type of some convenience sampling, that is, those people that are available or they are accessible, they are the one that we are going to select. For instance, now, if I want to study the rate of people that use library, the rate of people that use library, I'm going to focus on those people that are using library while I'm doing my research. I will not go and look for people elsewhere. Yes, sir, because they are easily accessible to interrogate or to interview. That is convenience sampling. The second one is purposive sampling. Purposive, purpose. You understand? Purpose. Purposive sampling. With purposive sampling, the researcher deliberately select participants who possess specific knowledge. Listen, with purposive sampling, the researcher deliberately select participants who possess specific knowledge or characteristics relevant to the study. Listen, purposive researcher, there is a purposive sampling. That is, the selection is done based on the purpose of the research. So, for instance, now, if a researcher is trying to do research on diplomacy, who do you think is going to interview? If a researcher is doing research on diplomacy, who do you think is going to interview? Anybody?
Maybe somebody in Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you very much. Foreign policy expert or an ambassador. That is the purposive sampling is done on based on those people in the field, because his research is based on diplomacy. So anybody in Ministry of Foreign Affairs or foreign policy expert or ambassadors, they are the people he's going to interview because they are relevant to his study. The third types of probability sampling is the quota sampling. Quota sampling from the word quota. So, which means that the population is going to be divided into groups, and fixed number of participants are selected from each group without randomization. That is, for instance, now, we want to, a researcher may decide to interview 50 men and 50 women. So when you go to a classroom, for instance, 50 students and 50 students that are male and 50 that are female, you go to a classroom, you divide the classroom into two or some groups, and you select your population based on your quota that you need for your research. So this kind of the quota sampling, until you get the quota you need for your research, you continue doing the selection. And the last one is a snowball. The last one is a snowball. The snowball, I think we all know snowball. Snow, when there's snow, the kind of doll they do, the baby they do. You know, the baby can be formed when you take one snow, you add another snow, you take another. So with the snowball, those people that are available for the research, those participants, they are available. They are going to help the researcher to identify or recruit other participants. Listen, it is usually used when it is very hard for the researcher to select population. Let me take an example now. Let's say you want to go and do a research in a ghetto where they have drug addicts, where they are criminals. You want to go and do your research there. If you see one person, one participant, if you see maybe their leader is going to call out other people to come out. If you see one person, is going to call out other people that are going to come out to answer your questions. Listen, so this snowball, it is usually useful for hidden population, especially to help to gain trust. You want to study maybe, how do you call a ghetto whereby there is a prostitute. If you have one prostitute from that same ghetto, she's going to help you convince other people to come and answer your questions. That is a snowball. So in essence, how do you call differences between the two? Differences between probability and non-probability. Probability use random selection. Non-probability uses non-random selection. In probability, there's equal chance of participation. In non-probability, there's unequal chance of participation. Probability, it is more scientific. In non-probability, it is less scientific. Less scientific. Number 4, probability reduces biases. Non-probability, it are prone to bias. Probability is suitable for quantitative research. Non-probability is suitable for qualitative research. In probability, findings can be generalized. In non-probability, generalization is limited. So this is where we are going to stop. But I advise you to look at literature review and hypothesis. There is a research question or hypothesis and variable. Look at this question number 3 that you are seeing. With relevant example, write short notes on the following variable theories model of realization. And there is one other question on hypothesis. That question number 6, write short notes on the following: conceptualization, hypothesis, validity and reliability, external validity. Please go and read that one, and literature review. Go and read that one. I believe everything is going to be well. So we've covered the most important part of this course. So question, suggestion, observation, advice, contributions. Contribution, advice, suggestion. Question, please. Let me stop the recording. Maybe you want to ask question.